to play something for you that Mayor Bloomberg said in his news conference today. And he was talking about stop and frisk in a way that's interesting because it recalls what President Obama said would happen had he had a son. Can you just listen to this and I'll get your response?
I think if I had a son and that son was stopped, I would have some real questions about it.
So Mayor Bloomberg is essentially saying that if he had a son and he was stopped, he would feel differently about stop and frisk. How do you respond to that, given how vigorously he and other proponents of this kind of policing have defended the practice? They're essentially admitting that if this were happening to their children, if they were happening to their sons, they wouldn't like it. Why can't they take that next step and then understand why these communities that are experiencing don't want it?
Oh, there you go again. Welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. That wasn't a bad Reagan, actually. Well, I'll let Noel Sheppard, associate editor of Newsbusters.org, decide that. Welcome, Noel. How are you?
You gotta go whale.
Whale, yeah, but it wasn't a whale. Wasn't called for. It was there you go again because here. And welcome to the show, by the way. This was something that you exposed at Newsbusters, and it was MSNBC once again. Selectively editing something to change the meaning, to make someone look like they're saying something they're not. They did it to Romney to make him look dumb. They did it to George Zimmerman, NBC did, to make him look racist. And now they did it here to Bloomberg, who is one of the creators of Stop and Frisk, a supporter of Stop and Frisk, at a news conference saying they're going to appeal the decision which banned Stop and Frisk, and they make it sound like he's against Stop and Frisk.
Yeah, I was kind of sorry this didn't get more play, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because it didn't get as much play as I expected. I'm not really sure why. This wasn't as egregious as what they did with Zimmerman, where they, in the middle of a telephone call, omitted a question. That was really disgusting. But I could make the case this is pretty bad because what occurred here is he's doing a 57-minute press conference about a big arrest that transpired in New York, and of course he's being just questioned about stop and frisk, and someone asks him about I think it was a New York magazine or a New Yorker article that he was interviewed in, where he commented about how he would feel a little bit differently about stop and frisk if he had a son. But he then went on.
Yeah, and I want to stop you there. I'm going to interrupt you. I won't say I'm not interrupting you because I am, obviously, but I'm interrupting you to play the whole cut, which you also provided at your piece in Newsbusters, to show what he actually said. I'd like to say he said it in the next breath, Noel, but he didn't even take a breath. He didn't even stop talking.
No, and what they did is they took 5 seconds of a 65-second answer.
Yep.
Of a minute, 5-second answer. They took the first 5 seconds and said, this is what he said.
Right, and here's here's the rest. Here's the whole thing, and not the whole 65, but here's what he said, again, from the beginning to where he makes his point, cut 37.
I think if I had a son and that son was stopped, I would have some real questions about it. Having said that, I think if I thought long and hard about it, I actually thought that Bill Thompson said it right. Bill Thompson said he didn't like stop and frisk, but he had a son. He wanted to make sure the kid didn't get killed. And the only way you should do that is to get guns off the streets.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, basically what he said was, if I had a son, I'd probably feel a little bit differently, but then I'd think about it.
Right.
Okay? And this is the difference between thinking people and emotional people. Yes, emotionally, you can have one feeling about any kinds of subjects. But then as adults, we use our intellect to overcome our feelings, to overcome our emotions, to come to a significantly more reasoned assessment. That was his answer. But what Joy-Ann Reid and MSNBC did on Monday is they just took the emotional part. The first 5 seconds said, and this is what he's saying. No, because then he qualified it. It's really, Steve, when is MSNBC going to get seriously called out for these? I mean, this isn't it's just a 65-second answer, right? That's not a lot of tape on a 48-minute show.
Right.
And this was a fairly long segment. This was the opening segment. I think the segment went about 10 minutes.
And I didn't even just play the 65 seconds. I played maybe 25.
Maybe 30. That's right.
All right, and you got the gist of it.
That's right. No, it's really to the point now. And I don't know whether I wrote about this morning or yesterday. And actually, I think it was this morning. It was kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing about. No, it was yesterday about the Greenwald thing. What Greenwald said, and I know you want to bring this up. What Greenwald said is journalism is not a crime or journalists are not criminals and they're not terrorists.
Right. No, absolutely.
Okay,
yeah.
But what Joy-Ann Reid and MSNBC did here in any other profession would be against the law. Okay?
Yeah.
They would not be allowed. I mean, there's not, and we've discussed this in the past, there's no industry or profession in America that would accept this kind of behavior. MSNBC gets with it now. It's you can't even say it's routine. It's almost on a weekly basis now that we're catching them in something like this.
Yeah, and of course, in the Zimmerman case, there's a lawsuit. So, you know, it is kind of against the law if he could prove they did it. Maybe he has to prove malicious intent. I don't know, but it's hard for people to, like Mitt Romney. What Mitt Romney should have done. See, here's what I think, and you know. What do I know? But again, I keep saying if the next Republican presidential candidate and going forward, if they don't understand they're running more against the media than they are their opponent, and if they don't make issues like when they did the Wawa, which I also played yesterday, and misrepresented, made him look like an idiot, or tried to with Andrea Mitchell, and left out the whole context of what he was saying, a brilliant point that he was making, he needs to address that. He needs to say, you know, hey, look what MSNBC did to me. Here's what I said, and here's what they played. Look what they're trying to do to me. But if they remain silent, they're going to lose.
No, and I think that's why at this point we have to be pleased with what Reince is doing, pushing back against CNN and
the chair of the RNC, yeah.
The chair of the RNC, and it appears that.
Well, let's not get to Hillary yet. Let's save. Okay. We're going to save. I want to go to Greenwald, Glenn Greenwald, whose partner was stopped, of course, at the airport by the Brits, and he was held, and they confiscated all kinds of stuff from him. And Greenwald doesn't like this too much. And of course, Greenwald writes for The Guardian. He gave Snowden the platform, etc. And here's what he had to say with Anderson Cooper last night on CNN Cut 35.
All of the best reporting over the last 40 years involves journalists having classified information. The Pentagon Papers, the Bush torture sites, CIA black sites, the illegal warrantless eavesdropping program. That's what investigative journalism is. And if you want to start criminalizing that, it means that you're asking as a citizen to be kept ignorant and to allow people in power to conceal what they're doing behind a wall of secrecy and to have no accountability or transparency. Journalism is not a crime, and it is not terrorism.
All right, so it's not a crime and it's not terrorism. No, not journalism isn't. But if you're revealing, you know, national security secrets, and you're in a position where you're not a journalist, or you might have something on you, he wouldn't say what his partner had confiscated from him. What do you make of his whole analysis of the situation?
Well, you know, I have sympathy for the fox and the hound on this one, because I mean, certainly I'm not a Snowden fan by any means, but what Greenwald is doing is, in a lot of respects, pretty darn good investigative journalism. And I think that if the New York Times were doing this, if Snowden had gone to the Times, or the Washington Post was doing this, and he did go to the Washington Post, I think the people would probably have a much different feeling about the journalist that was responsible for doing the reporting. So, you know, I'm not as antagonistic towards Greenwald as many on our side of the aisle, because I do think that he's kind of being a journalist here. It's not. I don't think he sought out Snowden. I think that this is conceivably a little bit different than, let's say, what's going on at the New York Times with Sanger, where Sanger is getting information directly from the White House and is leaking it anonymously and not saying it's coming from the White House, but everybody knows it's coming from the White House, and it was being done specifically to make Obama look like a stronger commander-in-chief. So I'm a little bit more disturbed with what Sanger was doing at the New York Times than here. You know, you got a guy who comes to you and says, "I've got all of this information," and you're a journalist and a very, very liberal journalist, very, very progressive journalist. I have a little bit of sympathy for what he's doing. I'm not as angered by it as many.
All right, good. Let's move on to, I guess, the man who played the role of conservative on Morning Joe on Tuesday. This would be one Chris Matthews going off on Obama. And here is cut number 18. Cut number 18.
Well, Obama's problem. Let me tell you I'll tell you the problem, the Obama shortcoming, and it's quite bipartisan in assessment. It's exactly what you would say, I think. Usually politicians take a while to develop a public speaking manner to where they're really good at it. It took Churchill a long time. He had a stutter and all kinds of problems, as Joe and you guys know. And he developed a great speaking pattern. And Jack Kennedy was never a good speaker till around 1960 when he was Gangbusters. He really developed a public persona. All that time in those 15 years in Kennedy's case and Roosevelt and all those people, they were developing the backroom skills, the one-on-one skills, so how you make friends, how you become class president, how you establish the loyalty of people one-on-one. The key political asset is the ability to sit in a room with 4 or 5 other people and have them accept your leadership.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how surprised were you?
I was surprised. I was not extraordinarily surprised because he's said in the past, believe it or not, that Obama does not like the dirty side of politics. He's not good at getting in the rooms with people. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't like it. So this actually wasn't a completely novel statement by Chris. It was novel in that he was being more forceful with it, and it occurred on Morning Joe. But what's interesting here is I wish someone like Chris Matthews would do some self-actualizing and say, okay, how did I get fooled into believing that all because this was a great orator, again talking about Obama, and all because he did have the good speaking skills, that meant he had political skills and governing skills and legislative skills. That's why what you do is you look into the background of a candidate and you see what has he actually done as a legislator. And we have background on Obama as a state senator in Illinois where he did nothing, and as a junior senator in the United States Senate where he did nothing. So it really shouldn't be surprising to anybody that he doesn't have these skills because he didn't demonstrate it before. So maybe people like Chris Matthews shouldn't have been getting a thrill up their leg just because of the oratory. And that's what occurred. If you recall, Matthews first gets his thrill up the leg.
Oh, listening to Obama.
In the 2004 Democratic National Convention, when he was a keynote speaker, and as soon as he finishes, Obama that is, Matthews is saying the first words out of his mouth, "A star is born."
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? And I don't agree. I don't disagree. He's a star. But is he a politician? Can he be a leader? Can he get in touch? Can he sit down with Republicans and Democrats and iron out a bill? No.
No, he has no interest in doing so. We're talking to Noel Sheppard, the associate editor of Newsbusters.org here on Malzberg's Media Madness on the Steve Malzberg Show. And credit where credit's due, and it's not the first time. You made a prediction. You sensed something a week or two ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where this Hillary movie, this Hillary documentary, NBC, CNN, the RNC chair went to the networks and said, we're going to leave you out of our debates if you dare to put these movies on around election time. And then you picked up on 2 members of MSNBC and Candy Crowley on CNN all at the same time. And MSNBC was the same day saying, oh, you know, this movie isn't such a good idea. Oh, it's going to be hard for us. It's a terrible idea. And you're saying that what's going on here? Something smells rotten. It smells like a rat. It smells like, or it feels like, they're getting the word from Hillary's people that they don't want this movie made. They don't want these pieces done. And sure enough, today, you're right, report, NBC News fears retaliation from the former First Lady if the Hillary miniseries airs.
Yeah, no, I did smell a rat a couple of weeks ago, and here's the rat exposed by the Hollywood Reporter, who spoke with unnamed people within NBC News and within NBC, and one of them specifically said that they're worried about retaliation from the former First Lady. So I do think that what's transpired here is NBC and CNN decided on their own to create these programs, and the Clintons don't want it because the Clintons are concerned. There's no way. Look, we're both conservatives, but you're not going to be able to just do a 4-hour miniseries that's a total puff piece. In total, it could be a puff piece, but it can't exclusively be a puff piece. There's going to have to be stuff in there that the Clintons don't want to come out. The Clintons want now, well, to a certain extent, I'm not sure what the Clintons want to talk about.
You're right.
Because they don't really want to talk about her tenure as Secretary of State, because then you have to talk about Benghazi.
Right.
And as I'm sure you probably saw, Camille Paglia wrote an eviscerating, just destroyed.
She said that, and you wrote about this. She said that she was interviewed by Salon,
Right.
and she said that Hillary disqualified herself for the presidency when she pounded her fist at the congressional hearing and said, "What difference does it make?" And I couldn't agree more. I just hope, Noel, and here's what we got to go against, getting off a little bit very quickly. Whoever our candidate is, or the Republican candidate is, don't forget what's going to come back to the fore. Remember when she ran against Rick Lazio, and Rick Lazio dared to walk across the stage and hand her something. He invaded the space of a woman. Well, how much could they go after a woman, even though the woman is Hillary Clinton, because she's going to turn into poor little Hillary Clinton in the eyes of the media if the big bad Republican candidate dares to give her a hard time.
Well, okay, but I'll counter that by saying, and I'm writing this right now, although it probably, well, anyway, this may just be notes to myself for the future. But I think that the problem that we as Republicans have made in certainly the past two presidential campaigns, and probably even going beyond, is we're becoming too intellectual a party, and we're not appealing to people's emotions. And the reality is, and I think that part of the problem is that as a party we're getting older, and meaning that the average age of the members is rising. And as people get older, they do become less emotional and do become more analytical and intellectual in their decision making. But that's not where the population is. The reason why Obama was able to win, or one of the reasons he was able to win in 2008, is he addressed people's dreams and he assuaged their fears. McCain didn't do that. McCain was talking to people's intellect, and he was just way too old and not a very good candidate.
Right.
Romney did the same thing in 2012. We're trying to speak too intellectually, I think, to a mass of people that largely make buy decisions, purchases decisions, and that's when, and voting is a purchase decision. People may not think that way, but deciding who you're going to vote for is a purchase decision.
Right.
Americans right now make those decisions, I think, very emotionally. And I think we're going to have to start thinking as a party, how do we begin to appeal to people's emotions? How do we address their dreams and assuage their fears?
Yep.
That's what Reagan did in 1980.
Absolutely.
He didn't necessarily speak intellectually, and he did speak intellectually, but he also teased our emotions, and he got us excited about him being president. Nobody was ever going to be excited about John McCain or Mitt Romney.
We're out of time, but as I told Michael Reagan, not too long ago, I said, but your dad did not have the cable TV media to trash him every single thing he did. But anyway, we'll pick up on this. Great points, Noel. Thank you, Noel Sheppard, Malzberg's Media Madness, associate editor of Newsbusters.org. We're coming back, and next hour, for those of you with us, Donald Rumsfeld on the Steve Malzberg Show on